Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be walking you through a tutorial of Salmon Man. It's been hotly requested. I'm going to go over a lot. I'm going to go over movement, how the paddle works, basic mechanics, the different surfaces, and then I'm going to walk through the route that I take. First off, who am I? I'm Corey, also known as Rongo Bongo. I'm on Steam right now because it's way better, smoother to stream from my computer, so you'll see it. But I normally play on Meta, and my record on Meta is a 221 right now on the normal leaderboard. I have 4 of the 5 leaderboards, I think, unless someone's taken the mountain. I don't know if they have. But the only one I don't have is the double paddle, which I'm not really very good at. So I'm not really going to be walking through double paddle mechanics. I'm just going to be walking through that single paddle, which should carry you through all the other categories. So that hopefully we can get some more sub 3 times on the board. But yeah, I'll kind of walk you through my perspective, what I'm thinking about, and the route itself to hopefully help you out a little bit. Let's dive right in. Okay. So, first things first, Salmon Man is a game about movement. Technically it's a rage game, but I really see it as a speedrunning game. This is really going to be a speedrunning tutorial because I love speedrunning this game. That's what takes this game from like a good game to like a great game in my eyes, is the speedrunning aspect and how short and quick the speedrun is, relatively speaking. So first things first is the paddle, right? This is how you move around. This is the most important thing to understand when playing this game, is how does this thing work? Okay, so you can kind of see I'm moving it around right now. You use both hands. What you'll notice is that the hands don't really move on the paddle in game. Like if you look at like right now, it doesn't look like they're moving. But what I'm doing is actually moving my hands forward and back some as well. So I think if I pause the game, it should show you where my controllers are. Okay, yeah. I don't know if it is showing you. Okay, yeah, here we go. I'm back in the game. Okay. Now you should be able to see my little salmon hands. Okay, so the way this paddle works is that the backhand in your paddle controls how far out or backwards the paddle extends. This is kind of like an underutilized thing in my opinion. A lot of people will sometimes take both hands, just pin their left hand or their off dominant hand kind of around their belly button, like mine would be right here, and then just uses the right hand to do everything. Which is okay, but it kind of limits you in some ways to really get that extra reach when you need it. So one thing I like to think about is whenever I'm reaching or whatever I'm feeling like I just barely am missing something because I can't quite reach, I'm thinking reach with the backhand, reach with the backhand. That's kind of what I'm thinking. The other thing is, so the backhand controls how far forward and back along this vector the paddle moves, and then the right hand controls the direction, or your dominant hand, depending on your settings. But most people's right hand. I'm just gonna call it right hand from now on. So when you're playing the game, you have the backhand to control forward and back, you have the right hand to control direction. So most of the time when I'm moving, I kind of have my hands, I mean the actual orientation of your hands doesn't matter. It's just the direction of the paddle is the vector between your two hands. So the forward one controls the direction, the back one controls the forward and back position, basically. Okay? So the way you actually hold your hands doesn't matter. So I kind of normally typically have them like stacked like this, and I'm kind of pulling like this for most of it, and then occasionally I'll reach, but a lot of times I just kind of have it kind of close to my body. The other thing is you want your hands close to each other. That way it makes the paddle move faster. So for example, I'm going to show you 2 examples. I'll show one example where my hands are close like this and I'm moving, and one example where my hands are far apart and I'm moving, and you'll see like it takes a lot more arm motion to actually move that paddle. So let's return. So you see my hands are close. It just takes a little bit of movement to move a lot. Whereas if they're far like this, it takes a lot of motion. For example, let me come back here. And let's say it's far. It takes a lot of motion of my arm to get this paddle movement. Whereas if they're close, I can just do a little like flick of my wrist. So I'll pause again so you can kind of see where my hands are. This is kind of a position I like to be in, and then just flick, flick, flick. That's kind of what I'm doing for most of my movement. Just a little flick, flick, flick here. Okay? So, that's how the paddle works. The next thing is kind of your general movement and ideology when you're making your like route and when you're moving along. So I think one thing to note is when I have ground contact, a distance I can move is a lot faster in 1 second if I'm like on the ground than if I'm in the air. That's my first take. Unless you have a lot of momentum, but most of the time you want to be on the ground as much as possible, because then you can kind of like do a lot of hits, and every time you're in direct contact with the ground, it's based on how fast your wrist moves, like how fast you can get the paddle to move, and you can make that thing move really fast. Whereas if when you're in the air, you have less control, right? So it's really all about having good ground contact and being a lot of ground contact, in my opinion. But you also kind of need a rhythm with things like this. You need a rhythm, because if you try to do like a double contact here, then maybe it's harder for you to hit this next edge as well, right? So when I'm going, the other thing is I never want to spend a lot of time. It's okay. Let me clarify. When I say ground contact, you want to minimize your air time, as in like you don't want to have nice high floaty jumps. Like this is slow, right? It's obviously slow because your direction is like not good, right? So you want to have more of like a angle skimming the ground kind of thing. But each time you hit the ground, you want to be also hitting the ground for the least amount of time possible, if that makes sense. Because whenever your paddle is actually grippy, like you move like vary with the paddle. So if I'm a long time on the ground, then I'm just staying where I am. The more I can move my paddle to the next spot, the faster I'll go. I guess you can't respond to me, but I was gonna say, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you. So the philosophy is I want to be constantly making small little pings and getting my flow and my rhythm. The other thing is that anytime there's like a back edge, for example, like on the rock or here, I want to use the back edge to launch because it'll launch me more vertical. And same thing on the back edge of these rocks. It'll launch me more forward. So if I hit here, then it will kind of push me forward and kind of down instead of popping me up, right? Because if I did the same thing, but did it with more height involved, it'd be a lot slower. So you'll see, like if I did this, and then jump down here instead of off the edge, I have a lot more air time to actually get down, right? Whereas if I kind of use the edge here and I'll kind of fling myself downward. Yeah, okay. So that's kind of the basics of movement. The other thing is you'll notice is like if I get to a point where my paddle sticks, I lose my momentum, right? I have no more momentum, right? If I kind of like keep my paddle on the ground for a long time, or if my body lands on the ground, which I basically never want to do. You never really want to be sitting around with your paddle, unless you're setting up a jump or something. But even then, I'm basically always just have my paddle on the ground to tell me like this is my fixed position. So when I have my paddle on the ground, that's like lining up, right? It just moves counter to where I am. Okay, that's basic movement. I guess I'll kind of talk more movement specifically when I get into the actual route. The next thing to talk about is surfaces. So there's friendly surfaces and there's not as friendly surfaces. So like you have just dirt terrain. This is like a pretty friendly surface. What I mean by friendly surface is it's pretty grippy. Like you don't have to worry too much about like your paddle slipping or sliding. When you're touching the ground, it's gonna like respect your paddle. It's not gonna slide. Same thing with wood. It's very grippy. So it was very responsive when I fling off of it, right? Same thing with rock. This basic like, I'll call this earth. Because rock is something different, but earth, it's also very responsive. It's this kind of reddish color. These are all good surfaces. This terrain, on the other hand, is kind of an unfriendly surface. You can see if I kind of like, I'm almost like doing a petting motion, I kind of slide off of it. Whereas if I did that on like the side of a dirt, it's gonna grip more. Like I'll show you over here. If I do, this is like the earth, right? If I do a sliding motion, I have a little bit more grip. You kind of see I can kind of do a little bit more grip, whereas on this terrain, I have a little bit less grip. You'll feel it when you play the game. You'll feel a difference. It's kind of more of an instinctual feel for the difference between these two surfaces. But the result is that if I kind of take some momentum towards the wall then I can stick on this much better than I can stick on this. So for example, I can stick on this. It is possible, but it's a lot harder. So I can push into the wall and then kind of ride like that, and that's fine. But if I don't get the angle quite right, it's a little bit harder. Or if I do on that side, it's a little bit harder. But this one is very grippy. Like, it is extremely grippy. All right, I can kind of almost go vertical with this one and go very up. This one's a little bit harder. Like, I'll slowly fizzle out. Whereas if I did it on this side, I would pretty easily be able to go up. And I'd just get pushed a little bit away from the wall because of the angle. Okay, that's the first couple surfaces. I'm going to go ahead and take us to where the next one is, and I'll resume talking about things there. Okay, the next important surface is what I like to call slick rock. This is slick rock. You kind of see I kind of slide off of it, and the harsher the angle, the more I'm going to just have no grip whatsoever on it. It's very slippery, so sometimes when I'm trying to like jump, you'll kind of have a little bit more of drifting around. If you hit it, you'll immediately bounce off it very sharply. Whereas the other surfaces will kind of be a little bit more grippy in your favor when you're doing this. So like this, will kind of like you'll hit. If you hit the wrong spot, you'll kind of be like, oh, I slipped off, and you'll pop off very easily. This is probably one of the more difficult surfaces in the game. And then I'll move over to the last surface that is really important. Well, there's one up here. I guess I'll just go up here real quick. Okay. I lied. Not the last surface, but one of the other surfaces is this rope here. You want to use the middle of your paddle, not the edge. If you use the edge, it'll kind of swing through and act all weird. And you don't really want to use your body either. You can, but you want to use the middle of your paddle here when you're doing this. Okay? That's the second to last surface. I mean, there's other ones, but they're not really important. The last one is the last important one. Okay, the last surface is this pipe surface. The top is normal, but on the inside you can kind of tell it's a little bit finicky and weird and doesn't really accept your paddle, and you can kind of get it stuck and weird, which will be very important for our run and one of the skips, but kind of for right now, it's like a little bit weird. Oh, and then there's these crumbling blocks if you need the backup, but we typically don't need these in this route. It's like a certain window before it falls apart, and then you can't use it to scoop off anymore. Okay, that's the basic surfaces. I kind of vaguely touched on momentum. You kind of see if you keep like the low impact hits, a bunch of them, you'll kind of see how you carry momentum a little bit. I'll go into this white area so you can kind of see. You can kind of see it's like I can keep some momentum if I go forward, whereas if I kind of go up, I get less momentum. But if you that's kind of the mechanics I kind of like to use when I have flame flat space. Is a lot of short little flicky hops. That's like kind of the basic movement and principles, and you can practice that. This is also slick rock. Is it? No, this is not slick rock. There's some rock where you'll kind of see where your paddle will kind of almost like slip out from under you, and you'll be able to tell and feel those. You probably shouldn't need to worry about the turtles, but they sink if you stand on them. Yeah, okay, that's the basics. That's the basics of movement. Next, I'm gonna get into the route itself that I've used to get the 220. There are other routes that can very well sub 3. I used a different route for the lava route that was sub 3, and I used to use a different route before they added in that little bush there to block off my old route. I used to go through here, but they now have blocked it off. You could probably do something where you go around the side. That's a theoretical route that I think would maybe be faster than the routes I currently use, or the route I currently use. But I'll probably leave. I think this is going to be a kind of longish video. So I may leave the routes to next one. We'll see how I break it up. I'm gonna record it all now though, so it'll just be a question of whether or not I break it into two. But anyways, if this is the end of the video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next where I talk about the route itself. If this is not the end of the video, I will have cut this and there will be no problems. All right. God bless you. Catch you next time.